Hey homeschool friends, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to my November homeschool update video. I love making these videos for you guys. For one, I just really love processing through what's going on in our homeschool. I love getting your feedback. So in these videos, I tend to talk a bit about what's going on in our life, as well as our family subjects, my third grader, my second grader, and my preschoolers. So if you are interested in how things are going, how things have potentially changed, stay tuned for November's homeschool update video. So hi, my name is Angie. Welcome to the channel if you are new here, or welcome back if you have been coming for a while. Like I said, November homeschool update, which I can't believe it's already December. Like November's over, we're into the holiday season. And I was looking at our kind of yearly schedule for our homeschool, and I'm realizing we are coming up on halfway. I am hoping to finish week 18 before we get to Christmas. So I'm super stoked that we are kind of on schedule, if you will. So I'll start a bit with family subjects. So I love our family subjects. They're mostly Sonlight. We do history, Bible, literature, and science, as well as language arts, but I'll talk about that in just a second. But we do those four main family subjects together, and it's going really well. So for history, we are doing HBLB, which is the first year of world history, so it's like ancient history. You guys, I don't really like ancient history. I don't know if you feel differently. I don't really find it that fascinating. I find it a bit confusing with all the different people groups, but the good thing is my kids really like it. They love watching documentaries. We've really enjoyed the books. I love the fact that Sonlight has picked some books that help it come alive, or at least it's just more entertaining. So we've been reading like the Children's History of the World, which is a little bit more in story form. And I have grown to like it more and more as the year has gone by. So I'm glad I stuck with it. I feel like I have found my rhythm with how to read it, and it helps engage the kids more. And it works, and so we're going to stick with it. I love the variety of Sonlight where we do a lot of like timeline figures and map work, so we get our geography and all within the history. I love their hands-on history is I think what it's called. Like this is what we're doing today. We're going to do this later today. It's a laurel wreath because we've been talking about like Athens and Greece and things like that. And I just love that. I love that my kids can do these hands-on things. I don't have to be crafty. I can just hand it to them. They're pretty good with instruction-based kits because we do a lot of like Tinker crates and Kiwi crates and things like that. So history is actually going pretty well, even though it's not really my favorite time frame, at least. I love history. I just don't really love ancient history. And then science. So with science, I just made a video. It might have been my last video that went up about like do an experiment with us, but I also chatted through an update on our science because I was feeling a little bogged down. I was feeling bogged down with like the schedule of doing the experiments and things like that. And I shared that in the last update, but things are going better with that. And just check out that video. I don't need to talk about it again here. My kids are loving this book. They are loving it. I thought they might be bored because it's chemistry and the periodic table. And sometimes those ideas are a little bit abstract or hard to understand. But this Lift the Flap book, it's hard to say, it's amazing. They really think it's fun. And I think it's because the book has made it fun. So it's like has all these special little characters like that are all the different elements, but they made them like have personalities. Like for instance, Carbon, let me go like this. Like for instance, Carbon has a like tiara because it's diamonds, and so it's just really fun. They enjoy talking about all these. There's a lot that are like explosions or different colors, or I don't know why they like it as much as they do, but they request this, and even my twins like to just look through it. I think it's just visually appealing to them. So that has been a really fun science book. And then Bible. Bible's good. Bible's equal parts amazing and struggle, because I feel like the amazing part is the reading and the discussion, which, I mean, right? That's Sonlight to a T, reading and discussing. And I feel like that's been wonderful. That's been wonderful. What's been hard is the memorization. I think where I kind of fall off the bus is after a number of weeks, we have so many things we've memorized, it all starts to kind of blend together and we don't do enough of review. And so I'm planning on writing out the verses we have memorized on like cards, and then maybe taking a week off from memorizing something new and do a review week. So that's just how I'm going to solve it, because I feel like we've become overloaded. Even myself, I'm just not great at memorizing stuff. I never have been. And so I feel like we need a bit better of a system. So That's fine. I can totally adjust. I'm not upset about that, but that's how that is going. And then that leads us to literature. Okay, you guys know this is my favorite part. We have gotten through quite a number of books since I talked about the books, because my last update was more of like a term update, like the first 12 weeks. And so I didn't talk about the books we've been reading, but there's been some good ones. So for the ones that we read for Sonlight, we read Henry Huggins. My kids loved this. So this is by Beverly Cleary. And there's a number of other books that we can read. And actually, they've gotten them from the library as audiobooks, or a lot of them. So they've continued with Henry and Ribsy. And it's just a sweet story about a boy and his dog and his neighborhood friends and the things that happen and the antics they get into. And it's very funny at times, which my kids just really appreciated, as well as this book. So this book is also funny. So this is Owls in the Family by Farley Mowat. I'm not quite sure how to say the last name, but this is like a classic, right? It's on so many lists. I didn't know what it was about. It's a very small. It's really funny. It reminded me of another book we read. It's called The Tarantula in My Pocket, which was just about this family who collects a bunch of pets. And this is a similar story, but in this case, they really focus on the owls they collect and the things that happen with the owls. And it's really funny and it's really good. And my kids enjoyed it. It is like older language, but they're able to like hear past that. Even if they don't quite understand, they get the gist of the story, and the story's so good. And then the one we are currently reading is this one, The Year of Miss Agnes by Kirkpatrick Hill. Another classic, another kind of older language. It's written in like, I think the 30s in Alaska. It's a beautiful story so far. We are about halfway, not quite halfway. I've heard it's really a tearjerker, and so we'll see how I handle it. Sometimes the kids handle these books that are sad a lot better than I do, but it's about this teacher who goes to Alaska to this group of kids in this really remote place, and they haven't had good teachers. All the teachers tend to leave them, but this one really cares for them, and I feel like she might leave or something like that, but I'm really enjoying it, and so are the kids. And what's funny is, so these are our Sonlight read-alouds, which we read during the day during school, but we also have a nighttime read-aloud because I'm in charge of putting the big kids to bed. My husband takes the twins, I take the big kids so that I can read some more to them. And so we are reading this book, and you guys, I'm loving this book. This is probably my favorite of all of them. It is a much longer book. It's called Sweet Home Alaska by Carolyn Epsy Dagg. This book has such a great main character. Terpsichore is her name. It took me a while to figure out how to say that. But her family's undergoing some hard times. It's the Depression. Her dad got laid off from the mill or something like that, and they're slowly like selling all their possessions. They don't have much to eat until their dad decides that they are going to move to Alaska as part of like a frontier program or something like that during the Great Depression. And it is paying for families to move, and they get a plot of land in Alaska. And he convinces their family to do that, even though the mom is more of a city girl than a live in a tent, use an outhouse sort of girl. But they have a baby and twin sisters and this older girl. It is so much fun. So far, the kids have really enjoyed it. I feel like the imagery in the writing has been so good. They can just kind of feel what it would be like to show up in Alaska and nothing's ready and the tents aren't even put up and they're sharing with another family and they have this like outhouse. And so I just love it. I love these kind of frontier adventure stories. It really feels like Little House on the Prairie, but just a different location and a different time frame, obviously. But I'm really, really enjoying this. I'm so glad we picked this one. So those are our read-alouds. Fantastic, amazing read-alouds. So to move on, because I think that is most of our family subjects, to move on to my individual kids, let me start with my 3rd grade son. He is 8, almost 9. He's about to have his birthday, and it's been really going well. I feel like if I look back on the first half of our school year, he's been growing, he's been learning. It's been great. We've had some snags, and I'm going to share a little bit of that with you today, but not too bad. So first off, math. We're using Saxon math. It's working fine. I feel like I haven't had any math updates this year, and I'm really actually kind of happy about that because that means it's going well. So math is going fine. Language arts. Now language arts is going better, and I feel like we're getting a rhythm, and I think it was just me. I had to kind of wrap my head around what I wanted for language arts instead of seeing it piecemeal, like how do we do spelling? How do we do this? How do we do this? I think with all my research and just thinking through philosophies and things, I've come to terms with what I'm looking for. So my big picture goal for language arts is really twofold. It's the ability to learn how to critically think, to like take in information maybe from multiple sources and be able to combine that. Granted, my kids aren't old enough for that, but that is really where we're laying a foundation for that. So lots of discussion. So critical thinking, and then the ability to express those thoughts. And so that's more like writing and things like that. So those are kind of the core goals I feel like kids should get out of their language arts education. So when I think about it like that, there's certain subjects such as like grammar and spelling that are needed for that, but they're not the main focus. It's almost like they are the things that prop up that idea of critical thinking and expression of thought. Is like spelling and grammar. You need those things to do that well, but those aren't the focus. If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense to people, because that is how I've landed, and that has really helped me when I've come to picking curriculum or really settling on curriculums. So with my third grader, our primary language arts program is Sonlight. The reason is because of that like discussion, critical thinking piece that is the whole package of Sonlight. But then also they have their language arts, which I really appreciate the copy work in the language arts, because we're able to kind of just look at the language, dissect the language, and work a little bit on handwriting, but mostly the creative expression, which, oh my gosh, my journey with Sonlight's creative expression has been kind of long. Like there's been times when I'm like, I can't do it. There's not enough support. But I've come to a really good spot with it. And so has my son. He really enjoys it now. And I'm so thankful for that. And I think it had a lot to do with how we do it. Not so much the program. The program's always been good and it's always had what I needed. I just needed to know how to do it myself. And how I do it myself is we work together. We definitely partner with our writing. I do a lot of typing for him. He does a lot of brainstorming. We do a lot of talking, and we fix it together. A lot of times I'm like, how does this sound? Does this sound better? And to try and give him the words and then explain why maybe those words made more sense than how he said it, and to just use it as more teaching moments as we kind of journey together, if that makes sense. And that's been working really well. And the part of the Sonlight language arts that I felt like I always struggled with, other than the creative expression, was a copywork application, which was the grammar and sentence structure and things like that. So what I've realized is I just need more. I'm a person who struggles with that myself, so I need more help. And what I'm doing is I am combining Abeka with Sonlight. And to me, it's a really good fit. And when I say Abeka, I'm only talking about, well, the phonics, even though he's pretty much out of that, but we still do a lot of reviewing the Abeka phonics, but mostly it's the Abeka language. So it's taking those lessons from Abeka and using them within our Sonlight, and also just doing the worksheets, because Abeka's excellent at spiral. And since that felt kind of big, like doing almost 2 programs for one thing, I just lessened the amount of problems that he has to do for Abeka. I cut about half out. If he's working on finding the nouns and there's 4 different problems, he only has to do 2, sort of idea. So I just really lessen it, because my goal is the repetition and the exposure. And I love that Abeka does that for me, and I don't have to really do it myself. And I just felt like for me and my personality, the copywork application of Sonlight language arts was not enough. But that's okay, because I can combine those 2. So that kind of gets the grammar piece of my son's language arts. And that leaves a couple other things. The big one though, and the thing we have switched, if you watched my last update video, which I'll link it above if you haven't, we're trying Spelling UC. Spelling UC is similar to the Simply Charlotte Mason. It's similar to the natural way of learning spelling. And I picked Program B for both of my kiddos. I'm just going a much faster with my 3rd grader. Like we started at the beginning-ish and we've moved through, and basically we're going to be moving to book 2 after Christmas. So we just took a month and went through book 1 basically to get him used to the program, to help him really mark the different parts of the words, which is in part why I was drawn to Spelling UC, because it helps the kids really focus on the language and see why parts of it are spelled different ways. They like highlight with colored pencils and different things like that, which I think are really good. And we already use Abeka, which focuses on special sounds. So I feel like since I taught phonics that way with kind of special sounds, to use a Spelling UC, which kind of focuses on word chunks and things like that. It feels very similar, and I think it's going to work. He responded favorably to it, as opposed to how he responded to the Using Language Well and Spelling Wisdom. That was bad. So this is going better. But again, I'm trying to put it on like second tier of importance when it comes to language arts. He will eventually get it. He is not a natural speller, not at all. And I think it's just going to take more work to get his spelling up to par, but I'm not a natural speller and I rely on spell check a lot. And I have my PhD, so it's all just fine. So that is spelling. The other things we're doing is he's doing typing with the good and the beautiful. That's going great. Handwriting with Danielian, also good. And then Wordly Wise, which is fine. So those are all good little supplemental type programs. We don't worry too much about them, but they're good practice. And then the last thing I have for him is his reading. So his readers, if you will. So I chose not to go the Abeka route. I stuck with Sonlight readers because I just really like them, and he really likes them. He feels like they're just real chapter book stories as opposed to a book with a bunch of little stories, if that makes sense. So we're reading this currently and he's loving it. The Sword and the Tree by Clyde Robert Beulah. I've heard such good things about this author and now I know why. It's excellent writing. He really enjoys it. He can read it all. I read it with him to kind of help him, but he enjoys the story so much that he wants to know what's going to happen next. And some of the other things he's kind of reading. He finished up these ones, which I'm not sure if I talked about this last time. If I did, sorry. He really likes these like history-based readers, step 4 readers. So we get those and we get them from the library. He also has really gotten into the I Survive books. We picked up the regular ones, but we have a few of these graphic novel ones and he likes all of them. This is the one he's currently reading. So he has a number of books on the go, which I love. I have a number of books on the go. So those are some of his readers currently. But to move on to my second grader. So my daughter, she's 7 and a half, I guess right now, and she's doing really well. So math, Saxon, it's going well. For language arts, her focus is different. Like I said, the big focus for my son has moved on to like critical thinking and early writing. Hers is more learning critical thinking for sure. That's always on my list, but also learning to read. And so the most important focus for her is phonics. And so that helps me with how much emphasis I put on everything else, if that makes sense. So phonics, Abeka. We're using grade 1 Abeka for her. She is making so much progress with it. I love the Abeka phonics program. I just love it. And she's doing really well with it. And so we use that. And we also do use the readers that go with the program because I think it's so necessary to stay with the kids' kind of current skill level, like the current special sounds they're learning and things like that. And these books do. And they're, decent size stories. We definitely skip the extra stuff and just read the stories. So we sort of follow the schedule. I'm not interested in doing extra worksheets in these books because she has her worksheets through Abeka, which I do have her do all of those problems. Like we don't cut those in half. This is really her main language arts. So we really focus on getting all of the Abeka content because then we move into some other stuff. And so for spelling, I also picked her up a Spelling UC set of student books and I put her in the same level as her brother. I put her in B, but we are starting from the beginning. And we're going slowly and that actually fits her level really well. And so I feel like I did a good job on placing them where they should be. But again, spelling's not a main focus for her. If like she becomes overloaded, I don't feel like spelling's a necessity in the learning to read time frame, but we're adding it just to kind of get her started on it. And that's the same with some of her other things. So she also does handwriting with Danielian, and actually that's it. That's all she has extra. She doesn't do typing yet or Wordly Wise. So like I said, her main focus is phonics. It's a really big skill, so I want to give her the space to do it well and not overload her with other stuff. So you can see the difference between my third grader and my second grader. And honestly, my daughter's like a summer birthday, and I feel like she's always been on that line. And I could have waited to put her in the grade below, and I feel like sometimes I should have, but she's okay. She just kind of straddles first and second grade, in my opinion, but it's not a big deal because we homeschool. So that's my daughter. As for my twins, who just had a birthday, so now they're 5-year-old twins, boys, and they're doing preschool. They're doing 2 a day preschool, like in the afternoons, and that's been great. They love their teachers. They're just amazing. But we're also doing preschool at home, and it's been really fun. So we're finishing up the Sonlight, the earlier one, the 3-4 program here before Christmas, and we're reading books like this one, and they love it. So this is the Make Way for McCloskey, and it has all of the different like Homer Price stories, the duckling story, Blueberries for Sal, which is actually the story I read during the Day in the Life video where I was kind of sharing what we do with the kids, and I was reading that to them. But they have an ability to sit for stories better than my older kids when they were 4 or 5 years old, because we just read this one about the boat and the whale, and I hadn't read it before, and it's a long story. And they sat through the whole thing. Even halfway through, I was like, do you guys want to take a break and finish it tomorrow? They're like, no. So we just read the whole story. So they love being read too. And I feel like it's just mainly because we've always done it, so they know nothing else, and they wouldn't expect anything but being read to for long periods of time. But they have really enjoyed this book, and really all the books. We're almost done with that program, and we'll move on to the 4 or 5 program, hopefully. Then as for kind of their skills, so like numbers and letters and things like that. Numbers, they're great. They love their numbers. Letters are getting better. I feel like it's just exposure. It's just using those flashcards or charts enough to help them remember what the different vowels say and the different consonants say, and they're very competitive with each other. And so that actually pushes them to do it better, which is just kind of funny. But I've seen some improvement. We're still kind of working on blending. Blending is hard. I'm not too worried about it. And the other thing, I'm just not worried because I know that the K-5 program through Abeka goes back through all of this stuff. There's so much overlap and repetition that if we go really slow through K4 and just take our time, and I'm not going to rush them because blending is a little hard, we'll just do what we're doing, and then we'll go to K5 next year. Like, I'm not worried about the fact that, oh, we're only a third of the way through the K4 program instead of half of the way through. You know what I mean? I feel like in the past I would have been worried about that. But now, since I have gone through K5 and grade 1 and grade 2 of Abeka, I know where we're going, and I'm just not worried. They will get those skills when they're developmentally ready, but the exposure is there for them. We try and make it really fun, and that's it. And so really their time with me is about 20 minutes tops. And then the rest of the day they just play. I mean, they just love life. So that's my preschoolers. It's good. It's wonderful. Really, November has gone well. I feel like we're getting into a good stride. But again, I'm starting to feel really tired and potentially burnt out. So I just want to make it to Christmas. But anyway, I would love to hear, how have you guys been doing? Are you preparing for the holidays? Are you still doing normal stuff? What's the plan? Let me know down below. And otherwise, guys, I will see you in the next homeschool video. All right, take care.